We begin at the feet of the beast, standing on the wind-swept plains of the high desert, dwarfed by a creature that refuses to belong to the natural world. 32 feet of cobalt defiance tower into the thin Colorado air, casting a shadow that feels less like shelter and more like a threat. This is the Blue Mustang, a colossus of fiberglass and steel that dominates the approach to Denver International Airport. To the weary traveler arriving at night, the first encounter is visceral, almost primal. Two glowing spheres of neon red burn through the darkness, unblinking and predatory. These are not the soft, welcoming eyes of a pastoral animal. They are the searing, electric gaze of a sentinel that has seen the apocalypse and survived. Visually, the sculpture is an assault on the senses, a deliberate rejection of the passive beauty we expect from public art. Notice the skin. It is not the matte hide of a living horse, but a slick, high-gloss shell that ripples with unnatural, vein-popping musculature. The anatomy is hyperbolized to the point of grotesque fascination. The ribs heave against the chest cavity, as if the heart inside is beating too fast, too hard. The veins along the legs and neck stand out like submerged cables, suggesting a pressure barely contained, a biological engine running at redline. This is a masterclass in fiberglass manipulation, a medium that Jiménez did not merely use, but weaponized. Unlike bronze or marble, which absorb light and suggest weight and history, fiberglass reflects the world around it with a hard, synthetic shine. It is the material of Corvettes and speedboats, of hot rods and amusement parks, industrial, American, and unapologetically loud. Jiménez, a titan of Chicano art, understood the language of this material better than anyone. He wasn't trying to create a classical equestrian statue, a bronze general on a calm steed. He was channeling the aesthetic of the lowrider culture of the Southwest, the candy paint finishes, the chrome, the celebration of customized power. The brilliant, shocking blue of the Mustang is a direct reference to this heritage, a color that screams for attention against the muted browns and ochres of the Rocky Mountain backdrop. But this vibrancy brings with it a sense of the uncanny. The sculpture occupies a space of cognitive dissonance. It is recognizable as a horse, yet it possesses the alien sheen of a machine. The uncanny valley fear that viewers often report, the feeling that this object is alive but wrong, is centered on those infamous eyes. Critics and conspiracy theorists have labeled them demonic, proof of some dark, occult intent behind the airport's construction. But to interpret them merely as evil is to miss the profound, personal nostalgia embedded in the neon. Jiménez was drawing from the visual vocabulary of 1950s Americana, specifically the neon signs that lit up the roadside diners and motels of the West. More importantly, it was a nod to his father's trade as a neon sign maker. The red glow was meant to be a beacon of energy, a fiery spirit, not a portal to hell. Yet intent often surrenders to perception. Standing before it, one cannot shake the feeling that the sculpture is watching back, possessed by a furious energy that feels dangerous precisely because it is frozen in mid-rear, forever poised to strike. It is a blue nightmare, beautiful in its aggression, demanding that we acknowledge the untamed, perhaps violent spirit of the frontier it guards. The narrative of the Blue Mustang is inextricably bound to the tragedy of its birth, a story where the metaphor of the suffering artist transforms into a literal, bloody reality. By 2006, the air in Luis Jiménez's studio in Hondo, New Mexico, was thick with tension, dust, and the acrid smell of resin. The commission for the Denver airport had been initiated in 1993, over a decade prior, and the project had become a behemoth that threatened to swallow its creator. Lawsuits over the endless delays were mounting, and the pressure to deliver this massive, complex structure was reaching a breaking point. Jiménez was not a man to compromise. He was known for pushing the physical limits of his materials, building sculptures that were as much feats of engineering as they were works of art. On that fateful day in June, the studio was a hive of industrial activity. This was not a quiet atelier with soft light and easels. It was a factory floor, filled with hoists, chains, and heavy machinery. The sculpture was being assembled in sections, massive hollow shards of fiberglass that had to be maneuvered with precision. Jiménez and his assistants were working on the torso, the largest and most unwieldy component of the Mustang. It was suspended in the air by a heavy-duty hoist, a floating island of blue, polished potential. Then the unthinkable happened. One of the chains securing the massive piece failed. Physics, cold and unyielding, took over. A section of the sculpture, weighing thousands of pounds, swung loose with the terrifying momentum of a pendulum. It didn't just fall, it struck with the force of a wrecking ball. Jiménez, standing in the shadow of his creation, was pinned against a steel support. The impact was catastrophic. The fiberglass edge, hard and unforgiving, crushed his leg, severing the femoral artery. In the silence that followed the crash, the gravity of the injury became immediately horrifyingly clear. The femoral artery is a lifeline. When severed, time evaporates. There was no ambulance fast enough, no tourniquet tight enough to reverse the damage done by the sheer weight of the art. Luisjimenez, the visionary who had spent his life celebrating the vitality of the working class and the vibrant energy of the Southwest, bled out on the concrete floor of his own studio. He died at the feet of the monster he was bringing to life. The phrase, killed by his own creation, is often used metaphorically in literature, usually referring to Frankenstein or a rogue AI. Here, it was a brutal, physical fact. The Blue Mustang had claimed its first and only victim before it ever saw the sky over Denver. The tragedy left the sculpture in limbo, a widowmaker sitting unfinished in the dust. For a time, it seemed the piece would be abandoned, a cursed object too painful to touch. But in a testament to the family's resilience and the weight of Luis's legacy, his sons, Adon and Orion, stepped into the void. They took up the tools that had essentially killed their father to finish the work. Every layer of paint applied after that day, every weld and polish, was an act of grief and closure. When we look at the smooth, seamless flanks of the horse today, we are looking at a surface that conceals a chaotic, violent history, a shiny veneer over a deep, familial wound. Today, the Blue Mustang stands as a lightning rod for the collective imagination, a Rorschach test for the anxieties of the modern traveler. It has earned the moniker Blucifer, a name that drips with both affection and genuine unease. The internet is awash with conspiracy theories that swirl around its hooves like desert dust. People whisper that it is a harbinger of the apocalypse, a symbol of the New World Order, or a marker for secret underground bunkers where the elite will hide when the world ends. The glowing red eyes are cited as definitive proof of its satanic origins. But when we peel back these layers of internet folklore and reactionary fear, we find a truth that is far more compelling and human than any secret society plot. We must deconstruct these myths to reveal the philosophical core of the work. Jiménez was not interested in creating a safe, sterile decoration for an airport terminal. He was interested in the identity of the West, not the sanitized Hollywood version of John Wayne and noble cowboys, but the real West. The West of immense, crushing landscapes, of violent weather, of survival and grit. The Blue Mustang is a celebration of Chicano identity, asserting its presence in a space, the international airport, that often erases local culture in favor of corporate homogeneity. It is loud, it is colorful, and it is aggressive because the history it represents is all of those things. The demon is in fact a guardian. In many ancient cultures, the entities that guarded temples and sacred spaces were not gentle cherubs. They were fierce, terrifying monsters, meant to scare away evil spirits.
Blucifer serves this ancient function, standing watch over the travelers, a fierce spirit guide for the journey into the unknown. The tragedy of Jiménez's death has forever fused the artist's spirit with the artwork, granting it a soul that few public sculptures possess. It is no longer just an object, it is a reliquary. When the sun sets over the Rockies and those neon eyes flicker to life, they are not burning with malice. They are burning with the memory of a father's neon shop and with the life force of the artist who poured his blood, literally and metaphorically, into the cast. The sculpture demands a reaction. You cannot walk past it and feel nothing. You might feel fear, awe, or confusion, but you are forced to engage. In a world of beige, inoffensive public art that seeks to blend into the background, the Blue Mustang screams. It reminds us that art is not always meant to comfort us. Sometimes it is meant to shake us, to remind us of the power of nature and the fragility of the creator. So the next time you find yourself under its glowing gaze, do not look away. Look closer. See the veins, see the tension, see the vibrant blue that defies the gray concrete. Acknowledge the sacrifice woven into its fiberglass skin. It stands there not to curse us, but to challenge us to keep our eyes open in the dark. If you believe that art should have a pulse, that it should carry the weight of its maker's life, then you understand why this horse must stand. Subscribe for more deep dives into the dark history of modern masterpieces, where we explore the beautiful, dangerous line between creation and destruction.